So, good day. We are going to be looking at Coriolanus, scene 3 of Act 1. And I know this is a bit of a review, but it's been a while since we've looked at Coriolanus, so I thought it best just to start again with Act 1, Scene 3. And so this is a very domestic scene because we have Coriolanus' wife and mother, and they seem to be your stereotypical woman, very gentle, very domestic. We have the sewing taking place. We have they are just sitting there. The men are gone. They are at war, and so it's just a very gentle scene until we get into the text itself. And it starts with enter Volumnia and Virgilia, mother and wife to Marcius. They set them down on two low stools and sew. And please note straight away that the contrast is especially around Volumnia, who's also sewing. So we have no reason to think that there's anything strange about Volumnia. Volumnia says, I pray you, daughter, sing or express yourself in a more comfortable sort. If my son were my husband, I should freelier rejoice in that absence wherein he won honor than in the embracements of his bed where he would show most love. And so what she is saying to Virgilia, Caius Marcius' wife, is, you should be in a better space mentally because your husband is not here. You shouldn't be longing to have him back home with you and back in bed with you when it's so much more prestigious for him to be gone, for him to be on the battlefield, for him to be out there obtaining honors, rewards, and so on. She then says, when yet he was but tender-bodied, a child, and the only son of my womb, which implies that she had other children as well, when youth with comeliness plucked all gaze his way, when for a day of king's entreaties a mother should not sell him an hour from a beholding eye, meaning when he was young, so young that a mother just constantly wants to have a child under her care. She doesn't want to be separated. She's constantly looking out for any harm that a young child can come to. She says, I, considering how honor would become such a person that it was no better than picture-like to hang by the wall, if renown made it not stir, was pleased to let him seek danger where he was like to find fame. And this sets her apart from other women because she's saying she loved the idea of the son taking risks. She loved the idea of him living on the edge, living dangerously, especially because it meant that he was having an opportunity to find fame, to find honor. And remember, we've spoken about Volumnia, and she is, in a manner of speaking, she is like a woman trapped she's like a man trapped in a woman's body. She has all these strong masculine, in this era, of course, strong masculine ambitions and desires, which she is not able to realize. And so she lives through her son. And so she is very much proud of all of his achievements. She says, to a cruel war I sent him, from whence he returned, his brows bound with oak. He is bloodied, okay? He has been fighting hard. He has been injured. I tell thee, daughter, I sprang no more in joy at first hearing he was a man-child than now in first seeing he had proved himself a man. And so what she says, when she gave birth and she discovered that she had given birth to a son, she was so ecstatic. But even that joy is nothing compared to now when he proves himself to be a real man. He proves himself to be courageous and full of valor. She absolutely loves that. And then in line 18, Volumnia says, but had he died in the business, madam, how then? In other words, how would you have felt if your son had died in battle? You know, because that's always such a risk. Here you are carrying on about how much you want to send your son out to war. You want him out there. And Volumnia says, then his good report should have been my son. I therein would have found issue. I would have found comfort if he had died honorably. She says, hear me profess sincerely, had I a dozen sons, each in my love alike, and none less dear than thine and mine good Marcius. She says, and this is the important part, I had rather had 11 die nobly for their country than one voluptuously surfeit out of action. So she expects her children to be patriotic. She expects them to be fame-seeking because that's what she is. And she says, I'd rather have all my children die as long as it was glorious, honorable deaths. Then enters a maid, a gentlewoman, and she says the Lady Valeria is come to visit, as women are wont to do. Men are gone to war and the women are visiting each other. And Virgilius says, I beseech you, I beg you, please give me permission to retire. Just allow me to go to my room. I'm not up for company. And Valeria is, of course, a friend of Virgilius. And Volumnia gets really irritated and she says, indeed, you shall not. And so we hear that her tone is very commanding. And she says, methinks I hear your husband's drum. And of course, the drum goes ahead of these senior military men and it's announcing where they are or their approach, at least where the approach is. And she says, see him, she means visualize, see him pluck Aufidius down by the hair as children from a bear, the Volscians shunning him. Methink I see him stamp thus and call us, come on, you cowards, you were got in fear, though you were born in Rome. And so she says, I can almost imagine the way my husband is, out there, not your husband, my son, out there playing with Aufidius and shouting at the common soldiers who, of course, are the plebs. Come on, you cowards. You were got in fear. You were conceived in fear. That's why you are such fearful beings. That's why you are cowards, though you were born in Rome. So, of course, when you were born in Rome, you automatically became a Roman citizen. And you had, quite a privileged status. And that's what he's saying there. He says, then she says, his bloody brow with his mailed hand, then wiping, and the mail, of course, is the armor. Then wiping forth he goes like to harvest. Like to harvest. She says, what happens during harvest? You are cutting down the crop. And this is what her son does. He cuts down the enemy with his sword. That's tasked to mow all or lose his hire. And that is what his job simply is. And he puts everything on the line to cut down the enemy. And that's probably why he is so victorious, because he is so unusually brave. Virgilia is not impressed by this bit of a talk from Volumnia, and she says, his bloody brow, oh, Jupiter, oh God, no blood. She doesn't want to think of her husband bleeding on the battlefield. So she is your stereotypical woman. The sight of blood is very upsetting, especially when it is her husband. And then Volumnia says, away you fool, it more becomes a man than gilt his trophy. So why have a trophy that's covered in gold? Because that's nothing compared to a bloodied man. That's far more impressive for a man. And then she gives an example here of Hector, and this is again from Greek mythology, and she says, when Hector was covered in blood, he was far more impressive than when he was being breastfed by the chief witch. And then, of course, she tells Valeria to come in and visit. And then Virgilia says, heavens bless my lord from foul Aufidius. In other words, heaven protect. She's praying aloud for the safety of her husband, protect him from the foul Aufidius. And Philamnia says, he'll beat Aufidius' head below his knee and tread upon his neck, saying that I have confidence in my son. My son will break this man. He'll defeat him completely. Then Valeria comes in with an usher and a gentlewoman. My ladies both, good day to you, sweet madam. I am glad to see your ladyship. How do you both? You are manifest housekeepers. What are you sewing here? How is your son? So it's just the general kind of small talk that's made. And then if you go down to line 58, Valeria says, oh my word, the father's son. So she's talking here about Caius Marcius' son. I'll swear 'tis a very pretty boy. Oh my troth, meaning on my truth, on my word. I looked upon him a Wednesday, half an hour together. Has such a confirmed countenance. I saw him run after a gilded butterfly, and when he caught it, he let it go again, and after it again, and over he comes up and again, catch it again, or whether his fall enraged him, or 'twas he did so, set his teeth and tear it. Oh, I warrant how he mammocked it. And so Valeria is explaining how she saw Caius Marcius' son, and the son was playing with the butterfly and chasing the butterfly, and eventually he got irritated and he shredded the butterfly, ripped the wings off, and which is quite a startling thing to happen. And Volumnia says one on's father's wounds. In other words, he's just like his father, and so the granny is rather proud. And Valeria says, yes, he's a very noble child, meaning it's a good sign for the future. But we know that that's quite disturbing, because when you look at, today we've got psychology, and we know that if you look at the childhood of serial killers, you will very often have seen that during childhood they displayed unusual cruelty towards animals, burning of animals, ripping of wings, maiming animals. And here they are quite proud of this child's rather violent tendencies. And Virgilia says, a crack, madam. Oh, he's just a young rascal. The idea of, oh, boys would be boys. And Valeria says, come, lay aside your stitchery, stop sewing, and let's go out. And then, of course, Virgilia doesn't want to do it, and Volumnia insists that she does. She shall, very commanding. And Virgilia says, no, I'll not over the threshold till my lord returns from the wars. And so she is determined that she will stay inside and, I suppose, be in a very passive state and pray for the safety of her husband. And then Valeria says, no, I'm going to see someone who's not well. Please come with. And she says, oh, I hope the woman recovers, but I'm definitely not going with. And then Valeria then comes up, and it's somewhere, she comes up with quite a bit of good news. Okay. But before we get to the good news, I just want to remind you of what we had spoken about quite some time ago. And that is, we see that Caius Marcius' world his domestic world is very female-based. And our conclusion was that his father most likely, remember they are patricians, his father had most likely died in battle. His mother raised him. He's got a wife's friends, and the son is of course too young, and so that would explain why he is that close to the mother. Okay, and then Valeria says, In truth, now go with me, and I'll tell you excellent news of your husband. Oh, good madam, there can be none yet, meaning it's far too soon to have received any reports from what's happening. And she says, verily, I do not jest with you, meaning I'm not joking, I'm telling you the truth. There came news about him last night. Indeed? Really? In earnest, it's true. I heard a senator speak. Thus it is, the Falskis have an army forth against whom Comnius, the general, the Roman general, is gone with one part of our Roman power. Your lord, Caius Marcius, Titus Lartius, are set down before their city Coriolis. They nothing doubt prevailing to make it brief wars. This is true, saying that they are encamped outside Coriolis, and they are pretty certain that they can take the city, that they will triumph over the city. So, which means brief wars, meaning the shorter it is, the sooner the men can return back home. Virgilia says, give me excuse, good madam, I will obey you in everything hereafter. Please, please, I want to go to my room. I need to be alone. I suppose she even starts crying. She's so emotional. She must be blonde. And then Volumnia says, let her alone, Lady Ashes. Now she will but disease our mirth. Disease, your mirth is your happiness, your good state of mind, your enjoyment. So she's going to ruin it. So just let her go. Just let her go and let her be by herself. And we can see that Volumnia is not a very sympathetic, not a very patient person, not very tolerant of the fact that Volumnia is so different from the type of woman that Volumnia is. And then Valeria says, fine, fine, fine. And then off she goes. And then Virgilia says, no, at word, madam. Indeed, I must not. I wish you much happiness. And then Valeria says, well, then, farewell. And off she goes. And that is how we conclude Act 1, Scene 3.